On today's show, Capitals prospect Andrew Cristall is blowing up for the Spokane Chiefs, and the Capitals power play looks to make some changes.
You're Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minute Cast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about Andrew Cristall as he is blowing up for the Spokane Chiefs. He was recently named the Tempo WHL Player of the Week. Listen, we got a bit of a taste of Andrew Cristall in the training camp last fall, and he was one of the last players cut. What can we expect from Andrew Cristall for the rest of the season? And is there a possibility he breaks camp with the team next season? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about trade rumblings as they're heating up, as the Four Nations is getting ready to kick off. And the trade deadline is right around the corner. There's rumblings out there about Trent Frederic. Is there any smoke to that fire? I'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about potential changes to the Capitals power play. But just to get it going here, talking about Andrew Cristall. And if you are not too familiar, well, then get familiar, as he is going to be one of the big pieces for the Capitals in the not too distant future. I think that there is a distinct possibility that Andrew Cristall makes the team next season. What are some of the things that we know? Is that he should have played for the Hershey Bears, except he was a little bit too young at the time, 19 years old. So he got sent to the Kelowna Rockets, but then that got changed up too, as there was a blockbuster trade between the Spokane Chiefs and the Kelowna Rockets. And well, as far as his goal scoring, as far as his contributions, as far as his improvements are concerned, he is next level and is going to be an absolute game changer for the Capitals. Can you imagine Cristall? And another player that I talk about quite often is Ryan Leonard, but Andrew Cristall deserves to be spoke of a whole lot more as well. So let's get into that today. I want to highlight one of the standout talents for the Caps in Andrew Cristall, who's been making quite a name for himself for the Spokane Chiefs in the WHL. And what were some of the knocks on his game in training camp, or the scouting report? What were some of the knocks on him is that his skating needed work, that his smaller size sometimes was driven off the puck. But listen, Andrew Cristall went out and hired coaches to work on his skating, his explosive bursts of speed, and he bulked up. So he worked on the things that he could work on, and it's been paying off on the ice. That just this past weekend, Cristall was named the Tempo WHL Player of the Week for the week ending February 2nd, marking his 3rd time earning this award this season. The accolades, the accomplishments are starting to pile up for him, and what he accomplished is, well, quite incredible. It's also worth noting he was also named the WHL Player of the Month back in November. So the proof's in the pudding, as they say. It's not me just hyping him up. It's not me just pumping his tires. It is just a fact that he is blowing up and is going to be one of the premier talents for the Capitals. And I guess the good thing is, of course, I want him to join the team if he's ready next season. But if not, based on the fact that he is a year older, he can play for the Hershey Bears if it comes to it. So in his last 3 games, he's racked up a staggering 11 points, 3 goals, and 8 assists, leading all players in the WHL. Go ahead and underline that one, leading all players in the WHL. Andrew Crick kicked things off brilliantly with a behind-the-net assist that helped lift the Chiefs to a 5-1 victory over the Victoria Royals. And just lighting it up for the Spokane Chiefs. Again, a blockbuster deal between Kelowna and Spokane seems to be paying dividends for Spokane, but he didn't stop there. In an electrifying 10-3 win against the Everett Silvertips, he shined with a goal and 5 assists. Now, one moment that really stood out while I was watching the game was the spectacular 2-on-1 goal where he definitely maneuvered past a defender to score from the slot. If you get a chance to check out these games, sometimes you can find them online. Quite something. And you could just see his talent and vision on the ice. One of the feathers in his hat is his hockey IQ, that he sees the ice very well. That is paying dividends and evident out on the ice. Then in a 5-2 win over the Vancouver Giants, Cristall continued to demonstrate his worth by scoring a pivotal goal that broke a tie in the second period and adding another assist on the PP. Generating chances. This isn't a one-off. This isn't a flash in the pan. He is demonstrating true greatness, and he capped off the week with an empty net goal, leading the Chiefs' third straight victory. I know the Spokane Chiefs are definitely singing his praises, as he has been lights out. And currently, Cristall's numbers are astounding. Don't take my word for it. He has 34 goals and 55 assists for 89 points in just 38 games. Staggering, I guess, is what you could say. He's on a remarkable 9-game point streak where he's tallied 8 goals and 21 assists. Now, I understand that this is the WHL. This isn't even pro hockey at this point, but what we did see in camp was impressive, and what we have seen for the WHL is nothing short of stellar. This scoring prowess has catapulted him to top the WHL scoring race, even making him the leading point getter across the entire Canadian Hockey League. And the Capitals, a true stroke of genius. Ross Mahoney and his crew drafting him so well. So talking about that history. For context, Cristall was originally drafted by the Kelowna Rockets with the 8th overall pick in the 2020 WHL draft. He made impressive impact even then, averaging over a point per game across 4 seasons. And then that significant trade, quite the rumblings in the WHL after a significant trade to the Spokane Chiefs at the 2025 WHL trade deadline. He really cemented his place as a key player and one of the players to circle, to keep an eye on. If you don't normally keep an eye on prospects, do yourself a favor and do that. So far in his WHL career, he's accumulated 143 goals and 226 assists for a total of 369 points in just 229 games. Not to mention, he's also seen postseason action. So he's seen play on the bigger stage, albeit in junior hockey, contributing 20 points in 3 playoff appearances. Now, the Capitals, the big team that selected him 40th overall in the second round of the 2023 NHL entry draft, and he signed a 3-year entry-level contract soon after. And what do we know? He was going to join the team, but if he played, 9 or 10 games, then he burnt the first year of his entry-level deal. Capitals made the right decision. Unless they, in fact, wanted to push all the chips in on him, then I think they ultimately made the right decision. Now, let's not forget, Andrew is also recognized as BC Division first-team All-Star in 2023 and a second-team All-Star in 24. He's represented Canada on the international stage, helping snag a gold at the 2022 Helenka Gretzky Cup and a bronze at the 2023 IIH U18 World Championship. This guy is quite accomplished for such a young man. Team performance in upcoming games, the Chiefs are sitting at a solid 33-16-0-0 record, showing a great form from a recent 7-3-0-0 performance in their last 10 games. So quite stunning. And they're positioned second in the U.S. division and third in the Western Conference, gearing up to face off against the Seattle Thunderbirds. The Chiefs, watch them, circle them as well as one of the premier players on the team. And Andrew Cristall is lighting it up. I'm loving it. It's exciting to watch this young team come to its own. We know about Cristall. We know about Ryan Leonard. We know about Miroshnichenko, all these young guns on the cusp of greatness. It is an exciting time to be a Capitals fan. All right, so coming up here after the break, as expected, trade rumblings continue to, rumble. And most recently here, the fourth period's David Pagnotta talked about rumblings about Trent Frederic. Would he be a good fit for the Caps? I'll discuss straight ahead. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. And listen, my team's not in the playoffs or the Super Bowl, and I'm guessing yours isn't either if you're listening to this show. But if you want to have invested interest in the Super Bowl, which, let's be honest, it's kind of a nothing burger for me. I could care less about the two teams, but thankfully, I have FanDuel. Download the app. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It is at Locked On Caps. And I want to thank all of you for making this your first listen of the day. So trade rumblings are heating up for this Capitals team. And the NHL at large, as teams that are on the cusp of greatness are trying to acquire players, and teams that are out of it, well, they're trying to sell off to try to build for the future. Now, the Capitals have struggled in the last 3 or 4 games, and what's becoming evident is they could use some depth. And the cautionary tale, the perils of being in the position that they're in, is mortgaging the future, giving up draft picks, prospects for a player that is ostensibly going to help take them to the next level. And fourth period's David Pagnotta talked about the Capitals as being one of the teams that could potentially be interested in a player called Trent Frederic. Now, he has quite a history playing against the Capitals and Alex Ovechkin. So let's dig into that in this next segment here. Frederic is also attracting attention from Vancouver and Minnesota Wild. So he is a buzz, drafted 29th overall in the 2016 draft by the Bruins, had a breakout season last season with 40 points, 18 goals, and 22 assists. I like that. If we could freeze that, then I kind of like that. But here's where it gets kind of meh. Currently struggling this season with 14 points, 7 goals, 7 assists in 52 games. And why is that? Why such a change? Well, one could say that the Bruins aren't playing as well. The Bruins generally do. So you could say that that's at least in part why you're seeing his numbers dip a little bit there. But all in all, it is a bit worrisome. And a guy that is, putting up 14 points, 7 goals, 7 assists in 52 games, I think the Capitals might have someone like that in-house. What we know about Frederic is he has a little bit of a snarl to his game. So his current contract, he is in the last year of a 2-year, $4.6 million contract, set to become an unrestricted free agent this summer. Now, so a rental, again, I don't love it. And especially I don't love it for a guy like Trent Frederic, who has not put up super stellar numbers this year, that I would almost be willing to see what we have in Hershey. And I know we've had a look at those players in Hershey, but his numbers just don't scream to me like, give me some of that. Now, the Bruins situation, the Bruins are currently outside the playoff picture, potentially prompting a roster rethink. And I think that's ultimately true, right? I think that the Bruins are kind of on the outside looking in. They're not out of it, but they would have to go on a tremendous heater in order to make it to the playoffs, in my assessment. What he's most known for, if you're not familiar with, is his physical play. That I like. Frederic has 142 hits this season, second on the Capitals, behind Tom Wilson if he was on the Capitals. Notable past confrontations with Wilson and Ovechkin. So, he would be right up there with Tom Wilson in the hits, but the difference about Tom Wilson is, well, he can actually score goals on the regular, and Frederic is more of, I hate to say it, a one-trick pony in my assessment. So the fit for the Capitals, Frederic can play with physicality and versatility, can play wing or center to the Caps lineup. But the bigger thing I think that needs to be addressed, and I know the Capitals should be all in on success this year. Why? Well, of course, Ovi's under contract this season, next season, and then we don't know. So I think the Capitals are pushing all their chips in for a playoff push, and former GM Brian McClellan did the things that needed to be done to put the Capitals in the position that they're in right now. However, in his current position, he's not dealing with that as often. Chris Patrick is, and I think it's his job to make this team ready to weather any storm. The free agents' concerns for the Capitals, Nick Dowd, circle that one. We need to get that one done. Lars Eller, meh. Andrew Mangiapane, I could go either way. I've seen glimpses of greatness. Taylor Radish and Jacob Vrana may hit free agency this summer. I'm kind of already resigned to the fact that Jacob Vrana is probably going to play only one season with the Caps, and Taylor Radish has shown glimpses of greatness. But ultimately, when you have young talent like Ryan Leonard or potentially Andrew Cristall in the wings, you really need to tread these waters carefully. Other trade targets, of course, the Capitals have talked about Yanni Gourde, who we know is recovering from a sports hernia operation. So Brandon Tanev and Jake Evans. So that's the big thing. I expect more of these rumblings to continue. Again, Dave Pagnotta of the fourth period, it's kind of their job to drill up these things just to get people interested. And he's one of the insiders like Saravalli and Friedman, that is what he does. Ultimately, don't love this. I really kind of wish the Capitals don't, and they won't pursue this. But I would like to see them make some additions. I'm just not necessarily in love with that addition. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about potential changes to the PP, the power play. Like I said, off the top of the show, the Capitals have struggled in the last 3 or 4. Some would point to that they made it to OT and got those points, but when you're reaching for that and saying, hey, we at least got a point, well, that is a sign that your team's not playing that well, and ultimately why you should be concerned. I'll talk about what we can expect to see on the power play straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So the Capitals, like I say, have struggled here as of late. Not hardcore struggle. They're still sitting in first place, but the Carolina Hurricanes are nipping at their heel and hoping that the Capitals stumble, that this struggling of 3 and 4 continues. And ultimately, the Capitals don't want any part of that. They want to continue the positive momentum. And the one thing I know about Spencer Carberry, the head coach, is he is always going to move things around until he finds a match that works out on the ice. And I think that that's ultimately why he is tinkering. And also just based on the success that the Caps had in certain regards in the last game. So let's do that. Let's dive into the concerning trends with the Capitals power play as they gear up for their last 3 games before the Four Nations face-off break. And wow, that's going to be a long stretch, I got to tell you guys, without any games. That I think it is of utmost importance that the Capitals ride this wave of momentum and pick up some big wins. The new faces of the power play, Alexei Protas and Ethan Frank, got their first real taste of the PP time this season. And head coach Spencer Carberry has made it clear that these adjustments are going to stick going forward. I think that, I've talked about on the show that Ethan Frank has shown a lot of promise in his time on this team. He has done nothing to make me question his judgment. And Alexei Protas, I mean, let's be honest, he has far, I think, exceeded all of our expectations. And Protas has done well 5-on-5, but Carberry pointed out that Pro has earned the opportunity on the power play, quote unquote. He emphasized the importance of ensuring these changes don't hinder Protas in other areas of the game. We've seen him succeed on the second line primarily, but at times on the first line. And the thing about Protas, I think, is that he's playing with confidence, swagger, and that is what is evident out on the ice. Key contributions in the game against the Jets. Now, the Caps only had around 120 of power play time. Protas managed to get an assist on Alex Ovechkin's power play goal against Ottawa, marking his first point on the man advantage. And I probably think that's what put him on Spencer Carberry's radar. He's been a solid contributor. We know that 5-on-5 on a team that has struggled at points. 5-on-5 ranking tied for 9th in the league with 33 5-on-5 points. Pretty stunning. Now, looking ahead, Carberry himself noted that, quote, the power play has gone a little bit stale, unquote, and he's hoping that mixing up personnel along with new formations can breathe some life back into it. Again, I think that is our hope, of course, that special teams, like I've talked about in the show, really get drawn into focus the later and later we get into the season. Now, the power play struggles. First of all, it's going to be evident as the Caps take on the Panthers on a Tuesday evening on how it all shakes out. And a Panthers team that's, well, pretty good. I think the Caps are going to have their work cut out for them. Since early January, it's been tough for the team. Managing around 17.5% conversion rate on the PP, placing them at the 25th mark in the NHL. And these struggles, I would say, were evident in the recent matchup against the Senators, where the Capitals allowed 2 shorthanded penalty shots and even a shorthanded goal. Boom, boom. The frustrating part. That was one of the most frustrating games I have seen this season. But let's talk about Ethan Frank. What does he bring to the table with a rich history of being on the power play in the AHL with the Bears? 27 power play goals to his name. His speed could be a game changer for the Capitals. Listen, there was a lot of question about if it was the right decision to have Ethan Frank on the team, being that he'd have to clear waivers. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think they have plans for him being around for the duration. Despite their difficulties, the Caps did manage to score 2 goals in the third period against the Senators after the coaching staff made significant changes to the personnel. But an interesting fact here is Florida leads the league in minor penalties taken with 203. Now, this could be the opportunity the Capitals need to capitalize on the new adjustments. So I think that at least to start the game, that is what we will see on the power play. But the one thing I know, just like the rest of the team and the rest of the lines, is they're going to get put in the blender if the Capitals do not see any production. I talked about on the show and people are like, well, you're kind of being hard on the team, Dan. They're still in first place. Yes, but complacency will get you nowhere. When you start saying to yourself, hey, they at least picked up a point in these last couple games. Yeah, but you know what? That doesn't show up on the back of the score sheet. It does show that, that they did get the point, but ultimately I would like a legit W. I want the full points. I don't just want a single point. And I think that that's what the Capitals need to work on going forward, is playing that complete 60-minute game that has, seen them have success earlier in the year. Get back to that. Play the hits. Set up for those greasy goals up front. Have Connor McMichael up there. Have Big Tom Wilson screening the netminder. Those were things that paid dividends for the Capitals earlier in the season. Now, to be clear here, the Florida Panthers are going to be a difficult opponent, but I wouldn't have it any other way. The Capitals plan on making it to the playoffs. They are going to have to face some stiff competition. And, it's easy to say, hey, well, we played really well against this poor team. Yeah, well, great. That's great, I guess. What I want to see is this team have success against some of the best in the NHL. And like I say, I think the Capitals will have their work cut out for them against the Panthers. All right, listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.